is really to change the script about menopause, because really it's a time in our life where a lot of positive things are happening as well. And we don't talk about that as much. And so I want to highlight that, as well as talk about things that you can do to minimize any negative side effects that some people experience. So to that point, today I have a special guest who is joining me to talk about movement. So let me introduce her. This is Coach Heather Collins, one of my neighbors in my city at least. So she's the owner of Heather Collins Training. She's a certified personal trainer, group fitness instructor, and swim, cycle, and running coach. She works with people of all ages and abilities to help them achieve their unique health and fitness goals. Heather provides unwavering commitment and support to her clients. She was a cross-country runner and swimmer at West Point and was named Female Athlete of the Year in 1988. However, poor training techniques and harmful movement patterns led to recurring injuries and 2 surgeries. Discouraged, she gave up exercise and started her post-military career as a certified public accountant and mother. 5 years later, she was overweight, stressed out, and miserable. By applying the training principles she used with elite athletes and emphasizing biomechanics and preventing injury, she was able to regain and ultimately exceed her previous fitness levels. In 1999, she obtained qualification points toward the Olympic trials for the triathlon. Coach Heather now uses the same principles with her clients, helping them eliminate poor training habits. Her clients learn to move efficiently and effectively in order to meet their training objectives. And I've worked with Heather. Heather did evaluation for me just in terms of running form. I had a goal, like Heather, I had years of poor training where I had poor technique, and I had a goal to start running more regularly again. And she was really direct as far as saying, it's not the exercise for you. You could do it. You could do some for fun as part of cross training, but she's going to be real with you. So I appreciate that. So welcome, Heather. Before we get started, if you guys have comments or questions, please put those in the comments, and I'll make sure we incorporate that into the conversation. If you are watching this later, you're watching the recording, again, you can still put the questions in the comments, and I'll try to get an answer to you as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about the perimenopause part of it, and then have Heather talk to us about movement. I've talked to you guys in the past about something called chi stagnation, which is just when things aren't flowing smoothly in your body. And anytime you have chi stagnation, it's going to exacerbate any other thing that you're experiencing. So I talk about that with people with any type of pain, with sleep issues, with digestive issues, everything. It's kind of like stress. Everything is always aggravated by stress. So when you have chi stagnation, anything that you're going through, like a transition like menopause, it's going to make it worse. That's why we know that people that move regularly have an easier time in menopause. It helps with side effects that some people experience, like hot flashes, brain fog, joint pain, any type of inflammation you have in your body. Movement is going to help with that, and obviously weight gain as well. So almost every single symptom that you can get in menopause you're gonna benefit from movement. So that's why we're talking about movement today. So I know when I was younger, I grew up in the Jane Fonda era, all of that kind of stuff, which now I love her show. But all we talked about was aerobic exercise, right? So if I'm getting my aerobic exercise in, is that enough, or is there more that my body needs?
Typically what happens when I work with a client, and you want to keep moving, right? So Amy, you just mentioned numerous benefits from exercise, as far as it's just going to help you if you're moving, right? The first thing we want to look at is making sure that you're moving well and looking at how your joints are moving and incorporating that in. So For example, let's say I wanted to use swimming as my cardio exercise, right? But let's say my shoulder isn't moving well, right? Like maybe it's rounded forward, okay, which a lot of people, and I look a little hunched back, that swimming might not work well for me. If I'm swimming, you actually want to pull straight through when you're swimming. Okay, sorry, it's hard on the video.
Yeah.
You want to pull straight through when you're swimming. But maybe when you're swimming, you're rotating your arm, which can really stress your shoulder joint. So one of the things you want to incorporate even before you get heavily into the cardio exercise is looking at how you're moving and your mobility. So with my clients, I tend to start with that piece, like how are you moving? And there's exercises, there's mobility exercises to help you learn to control your joints and how they're moving. The other thing, we might look at is strength training. So particularly bone density can be an issue for women as they go through menopause. And depending on the cardio exercise, that's not quite going to be enough to help with that bone density. So for example, I have one client right now who is having, that's a primary concern of hers. She does almost all strength training. When we do testing for how her cardio system's functioning, it's functioning very well. She does some light cardio work right now, but we're really trying to pump up her bone density. One of the things that can be a real problem when, as you get older and those bones get more fragile is, like a fall or something that's very hard to recover from and get back to moving well. And having stronger bones will help prevent breakage. Also, I tend.
One second. So could you repeat that one more time for my mother in case she did not hear that about you may need to do some strength training? And hi, Joel. Thanks for joining us.
I wouldn't say may. I mean, it really depends what your goal is, which is why I ask my clients. But if bone density is a concern, and even to keep doing their, okay, then you definitely need to do some strength training. It does not have to be with weights necessarily. Like you don't have to go grab dumbbells. I can use my own body for weight. So for example, even a push-up, on a wall, right? Like that's a body weight strength exercise. I'm controlling my own body. Weights can help though, especially if you're lighter and your body doesn't weigh enough. Will that get your mother on board?
She knows she needs to do it. It's actually just doing it.
Well, that's one of the things that I work with my clients is when it's very challenging, like you don't know what to do. Because, exercise, it sounds simple, kind of like losing weight maybe. Oh, it sounds simple, but when you get into it, it's really complicated and challenging and figuring out what exercises you should do and what you should do if your shoulder does hurt or your hips hurting or your knees hurting. It gets much more complicated. So that's basically the service I offer my clients.
Yeah, and
is helping them through that.
Pointed out, I have a lot of people that come to me for pain, obviously. And so I always tell people, not always, it depends on what's causing their pain. But a lot of them, I say, I can help you. I can get rid of the pain, but, you're walking with your head forward like this all the time, and you need to fix that. And unless you fix that, you're always going to have to keep coming back to see me, which is great. I have 2 kids that are going to college. I can do that much. Or you can go see a physical therapist, or you can go see Heather. So a lot of times that's when I refer you to Heather, especially if I know especially if I know the issue that is causing the problem for you is the way you're exercising and not doing it correctly. I would refer you to Heather. But people know that I've talked about you before. So just want to clarify, like, this is who it is.
And something like that, like with your neck forward, there's all sorts of exercises that we can incorporate to help you not do that. Like there's certain movements that you can make with your neck as far as doing some neck circles. There's patterning to pull your chin back. And movement, any kind of movement, and everything with menopause, like it's just going to help, right? And it's just going to make you feel better.
Yep. So how should our movement or exercise differ in our 40s or 50s compared to our 20s?
I don't think necessarily that it would differ particularly. However, much more likely that by the time you're 40 or 50, you've accumulated more issues and developed more movement patterns that are maybe not as healthy and could be harming you. And what you don't want to do is end up where you can't move, right? So I had a client come to me, and basically every time something hurt, they stopped doing it. So for example, running was hurting. So they, instead of fixing their running form and learning how to run well and strengthening like their, the muscles that stabilize them, they decided to stop running. And it kind of makes sense, except for then they did that with cycling. And they did that with, I think, swimming too, and the row machine. And all of a sudden they're like, the only thing I have left is walking, and that hurts. So when you're in your 40s and 50s, you may have some of these accumulated issues, which make you a little bit different than when you're in your 20s. But the basics are the same. You want to do your mobility work, okay? And you want to learn to control your joints and move well. You want cardio training that's going to help with your heart and also relieve stress, which is really nice. And you want strength training, and that includes strength training your core. And those are kind of like the building blocks. And you want to not necessarily do the same thing every day, which keeps you stagnant, but you want to build phases throughout the year where you're working on different things.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Also, clients like say they had hot flashes at night and they're thinking, well, I shouldn't train today because, I didn't get sleep. It may alter your training on that day, but, a 20-year-old could have stayed up all night gaming and they might want their training to be, less intense that day. But I don't personally recommend skipping it. I think it's a bad habit. And I think there's a way to modify what you were going to do that day to make you feel better.
Yeah, it's important to be consistent and show up.
Yep.
It's just a good mental exercise as well, and keeping that commitment to yourself. Doing that, for me, I was just talking to some people. That is one of the things I'm appreciating about myself during this time, that I was consistent with my workouts. I didn't use it to, because my schedule had to change. And I don't know that I would be sane right now if I hadn't been consistent with my workouts. They just had to shift.
Yep, absolutely.
So if someone has not been moving regularly or working out regularly, how can they get started?
When I'm trying to develop something new, I almost always want to go to an expert to get me started if I can, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, that's a nice thing to do. And even if it's something like I was learning to knit, rather than pick up a book, try to read it, try to figure it out, I think it's nice if you can get some instruction so that somebody can look at you and you're not reinforcing problems when you're moving. That said, if walking, okay, if you can walk and it's not bothering you, I think walking is a great place to start building that in. If you're limping and it's causing you foot pain, then I wouldn't suggest it. One of the things that people do, or my clients at least do regularly, and most people, is sometimes they'll be like, okay, I'm going to walk, and they add in a lot. Typically, when you're starting something low impact, cardio, no more than 20 minutes to start. Okay. Now you might be able to go much longer, but that's kind of the safe zone. And you can check, like, is it causing any issues with my feet, my hips, my knees? And then from there, build about 10 minutes or 10% a week. As far as higher impact, so that could be cycling, swimming, walking would be low impact. Higher impact, like running, you typically 5 minutes max to start. And I thought I had a coach at one point and I was training to run a marathon. And I had built up to, right, like a 26-mile run. And after that marathon, he had me take 2 weeks off from running to allow my body to rest. And my first workout back had 5 minutes of running in it.
Really?
Like there was some walk. Yes. But I built back up much more quickly. Yeah. But it's just a test. Like, how am I feeling? Can I get my form back? So for running or high impact, like if you wanted to start jumping rope or something like that, 5 minutes, and then build, about 5 minutes a week easing into it. I don't always do that though. So for example, I grew up in Vermont and I hadn't gone cross country skiing. So this is a tip for those of you that aren't planning to follow that instruction. So I hadn't gone in 20 years. So I didn't know how it was going to go, right? Like I don't use those muscles and the same way. And really the issue is going to be like for cross country skiing, you pull, right? And I hadn't made that motion like hundreds of times in 20 years. But I wanted to go longer than 20 minutes, especially after I rented the equipment. So instead of doing an out and back that would have ended up with me, 5 miles away from the lodge, I decided to do the loop that was just as long, but went around the lodge, figuring there was lots of ways to come back. And if I didn't feel like, like if all of a sudden my shoulder was throbbing or my knee or whatever, I could just come back to the lodge. So, or plan on like, I don't know, I guess we can't, like calling somebody if you go for a bike, calling somebody to bring you back. I would stop if it hurts. For strength training, I would look for body weight strength training exercises. So for example, push-ups, upper body, push-ups, dips, and there's variations on push-ups. There's rocking and rolling and crawling are all good body weight strength. There's pike presses or like handstand push-ups. I would start with trying to control your own body. And if you're looking at more lower body, like squats, split steps, split squats, side steps, that type of movement. And then, core like shoulder bridges, dead bugs.
Dead bugs. For a long time.
Yeah. I think body weight is the way to start because you're gonna, if I add a weight and I'm not moving well, it could be problematic with that movement pattern. I think with your body weight, you get to learn to control your joints better. And that's how we move through life. So that's kind of where I'd start, is looking at some of those. And I think go ahead.
To Heather's point about a coach, a lot of people think they know how to do push-ups, but most people don't. And that's an easy way to injure yourself if you're doing too many of those incorrectly. So learning how to do those movements correctly is critical.
Do you want me to show you the number one thing that I probably correct?
Sure.
Okay. Here, let me see.
And while she's setting up the camera, I know Dr. Chatterjee has a 5-minute kitchen strength training workout that you can do if you're really just starting. Okay.
Love it. Okay. So probably for women, and particularly even women like, premenopausal going through menopause, like in that category. Okay. When you squat, okay, you want your knees to track over your second and third toe. Okay. And I can do all different squats. So right now I'm demonstrating a back squat. There's also a front squat. I can go a little bit wider on my squats. I can toe out. The most common correction I make, and you guys can try this in your house today, like you can even sit in a chair so you squat all the time, and clients' knees will go in when they're doing their squats. It's probably the number one correction I make. The other thing that can be linked to that, so check your feet. Your feet should be level on the floor with your big toes down on the floor. So just something to look at. That's probably the most common correction that I work with people on. And it's a little bit trickier to fix than just knowing about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And
right.
You do it all day, every day when you're sitting in a chair. So
right.
you're hurting yourself just sitting. So it's an important thing to correct.
Yeah.
If people have been significantly impacted because of this financially, and they're not able to work one-on-one with a coach right now, what are other ideas of how to do it that might be a little bit more affordable for them? Because I definitely know, like you said, anything that whenever we're trying something new or we just feel like something hasn't been a priority in our life and we want to reprioritize it, I know 100% of the time I always get better results if I use a coach because it helps me be accountable. It helps me do it correctly. We all know coaches are critical in all areas of our life. Well, maybe we don't all know that, but I'm passionate about that.
Well, they can, yes, right? Like you got to get helpers.
Yes, yes.
I think, well, the tips I gave for going in slowly so you don't hurt yourself with the cardio are good. And that's free, right? Like you can start out more slowly. I think building in. So if you haven't been working out, don't go every day of the week for an hour and a half. Like maybe try 3 days in a week, see how you feel. And then, build onto that. For the strength training exercises, like the squats I was just showing you, often what I'll do or I've had clients do is you can look at videos. So even if you go to my Instagram page, I have videos, a lot of body weight strength. I've been posting a lot of at home type workouts where you don't minimal equipment, like stuff you have in your house that's super easy to grab. And what I think can be very beneficial, and maybe people have gotten better at it because they've been, video chatting and Zooming, is watch a video and then video yourself and kind of look and see, am I doing the things, that the person's doing on the video, or do I look different? An example of that might be here. I think I can show you guys this. So another correction I make is people will come into their plank, like a plank, right? But, they're like this. And
yeah.
Pretty easy for somebody to see on a video that, when they video themselves, that they don't look like the model, the example.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
so
great.
That could be, yeah.
And you can also do group coaching, right? With some people, instead of maybe if it's a little out of reach to have one-on-one coaching, you could do some group coaching.
I would look at, for me, if I was going to pay, I would make sure I'm getting feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Unless if you're paying for the exercise component. If you're paying to socialize, completely different, right? Like maybe it's fun to hop on with other people, but unless you're getting feedback, it's really not much different than watching a video. And I would get, again, I don't think you necessarily need it every week. Like one of the services I have is we have a free consultation. Like I can look at you and direct you during that consultation, no fee, to, okay, what might work for you, even though at this point, you're not in a position to pay. I think groups can be really tricky because unless you have the skill down, they tend to move really quickly. So if you're not getting feedback, I think that's really hard. I think it's almost harder than having a video that you're watching, because maybe you can stop the video and pause it and go, wait, I don't understand that. Particularly injurious are like Zumba because it's a lot of complicated movements. Now, if you've got them down, it's going to be great and fun, right? But if you don't know the movements, it can be really hard in a group. I think yoga can be really challenging if you're not getting feedback too, particularly if you haven't been moving and you don't have the range of motion.
But not a class, but sometimes aren't there opportunities to do group coaching where it's a smaller, like maybe 3 people that are being coached together? So it's coaching, not a group class.
Yes. So as long as you're getting feedback. So for example, most of my clients, they pay a flat monthly fee. And as part of that fee, they get, I call it what you just described. It's shared personal training time. They get group training, but I've called it group like personal training because you're getting feedback. So I'll be watching you right now on Zoom and I'll be saying, Amy, your knees are going in on the squat. Like, go ahead, like let's make it smaller. Let's squeeze your glutes. Like focus on keeping those knees apart. They also get a training plan. So I'm telling them, depending on what they want, even if I'm not looking at them, I make sure they know the movements and what work they're going to do each day. And then we have one-on-one meetings to see how it's going and everything. Before this, they also used to get access to the training facility to come in, but that hasn't been happening.
Yeah. So again, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the comments and we'll address those. But we've talked a little or alluded to this. How can people work with you? And you mentioned your videos. You said those are on your website. Is that?
Yeah, you can go through the website. My website's heathercollinstraining.com. You can also go to Instagram, which is Heather Collins Training.
Okay.
And I think on the Facebook page, there's some videos too.
Okay. So I just put your website out.
Thank you.
So what's the plan? Do you know, are you going to be seeing some people? Oh, are you still telehealth right now?
So right now I've opened up training for some clients to come back if they want one-on-one. A lot of my clients have chosen not to do that and to continue with the telehealth training or the video training, just because it cuts down their risk of coming into the facility. Also, I've offered if we want to meet outside, which I think also cuts down people's risk for one-on-ones. So that's what I've done. I have not personally opened up yet to like small groups outside. I want to see how the one-on-ones go.
Yeah. All right. So if you are interested in learning more about coaching with Coach Heather, you can go to heathercollinstraining.com or follow her on Facebook or both. And like she said, she's done a lot of videos over this time period. That's what I was paying attention to and where I got the idea for this as well. Anything we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure you added?
Just, I don't know, like, I think mentally, like, people think that moving should be easy. And, if it's not easy for you, I just don't think it is easy. I think that it's like the Cinderella story where they misled us that it was going to be easy, but it's doable, right? Like, it's doable. So.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Again, if you're watching this later and you have questions, make sure you post those and we'll try to get answers back to you. And I mentioned this is a series. So tomorrow I have Dr. Mullins joining to talk about hormone replacement therapy. Always a good topic that people are interested in. But again, try liston first if you haven't been doing that regularly. Then Tuesday, we'll be talking more about bone health, and Becky Liston, a physical therapist, will be talking about yoga for bone health. On Wednesday, we're talking about how you uncover your creativity. And Thursday, we're talking about sexuality and perimenopause. And on Friday, we're talking about pelvic health. So still lots left to discuss. So have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks a lot, Heather, for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.